Welcome to part 3 of this IT management series on endpoint control. We're going to be talking in this segment about the use of agentless technologies within a cloud environment. The kind of issues that surface when you use Microsoft and Windows infrastructure as you deliver cloud services or as you use cloud services. By way of introduction, I'm Bill Keyworth, Vice President and Principal Analyst at ptak-noel-associates. I'd like to welcome David-Roudebush, Executive Vice President at promisec. Why would agentless technology be so important in the dynamic requirements of managing cloud services?
Sure. Well, cloud computing has some tremendous benefits about it, but there's certain aspects that are kind of a double-edged sword. One of the concepts behind cloud computing that makes it so exciting for so many people is if I can limit the people that can impact that endpoint, I can reduce the support cost. Pretty basic. One guy can support a machine, a server, that's going to impact or support hundreds
Benefits
or thousands.
of central computing, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the downside is technicians are human. They sometimes make mistakes. When those mistakes happen, they can impact a lot more machines at one time. The other thing is, believe it or not, software vendors sometimes write code that doesn't always work as planned. So I do an update and I can impact hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people in the click of a button versus just one on an endpoint. So there's some challenges there. And I guess the way to balance those challenges, the way to mitigate risk is have an effective way to not just support the cloud, but to make sure everything's working all the time on those servers versus sometimes. Because just because you move to a cloud doesn't mean those applications don't still have that same dependency on processes and services and registry-keys. The downside is if there's a mistake, which happens, it has an impact of affecting a lot more people. So cloud computing is an exciting area. There's a lot of benefit. There's some added risk that sometimes people need to look a little closer at.
What's the impact that that's going to have on cloud computing where they're constantly moving servers and they're changing servers on these applications, which is the whole concept behind outsourcing infrastructure?
Another very common thing that happens that we find out there is that people move servers. In IT, you move infrastructure constantly. But when you have an integrated environment, servers are communicating with all the endpoints to give updates. Well, if I move a server, I now have to communicate with every endpoint and say, hey, to get your updates, you need to look in a new place. So I do something like write a script. I use a couple different techniques to push an update out to every endpoint. And by policy, we should be fine. But the reality is something has disabled that endpoint from getting the update. The same issue is going to happen when we're dealing with cloud computing because one machine is going to have problems. As good as we do to build the right processes and the right security and the right protocols and the right training, Murphy's Law happens. Things go wrong. And when I narrow it down to a single machine or a set of servers, it's a lot safer in the fact that I don't have to support tens of thousands of endpoints. But the truth is, when something does go wrong, it's going to impact a lot more people.
Why would agentless technology, the way that you're talking about it, be so critical in the dynamic environments of cloud computing as they provide, management of cloud services?
Sure. Well, we have to first look and understand what's the benefit of cloud. And the benefit of cloud is pretty simple. It's pretty easy to understand. Can a small group of technicians support a fewer number of machines and distribute that value to a lot of endpoints? It's kind of going back to the mainframe world. And there's a tremendous benefit to that. We don't have to worry about so much disruption taking place in so many endpoints. And if we have a large enterprise, supporting that endpoint is becoming more and more costly, more and more risky. And not doing so puts our business at risk. You can read about it almost any week in the media. Something happened bad and something was exposed. So everyone's trying to find, how do I more effectively and efficiently reduce my risk? How do I minimize the amount of things can go wrong? And cloud computing is a fantastic strategy. It's a double-edged sword because while you get all that power and that dynamics of having smaller amounts of machines you have to maintain and distributing more value to end users at a lower cost with less technicians, one machine goes wrong and it can impact a lot more people, which can impact the business. And for cloud computing to work perfectly has to assume nobody ever makes a mistake. No technician ever makes a mistake. No software vendor ever pushes out an update that may cause a problem. And that's not our world. That's where we'd like to live. It's not the world we live in today. So I think if you're going to look at a cloud strategy, you have to again, heavily depend on some of these critical applications. Many of them are agent-based. But at the same time, you need an independent way to measure and monitor the effectiveness of those tools. Find something the moment it goes wrong by measuring it versus waiting for the phone to ring.
Talk to me about some of the benefits that agentless technology could play in SLAs, service level agreements.
One of the challenges with service level agreements is I lose control of the endpoint because I've outsourced it to a group of people, a contractor, a vendor, a business partner. But then I have to have them tell me how good of a job they're doing. Again, it kind of comes back to the software world. We buy a product and we let them tell us how good of a job they do, and we know that doesn't work. When we go to outsource, whether it's us providing the service or us managing the service, we have the same problem. And trust but verify is becoming more critical today than it's ever been in the Windows environment, because the risk and the cost is astronomical. Measure what matters, monitor for change, and have the most cost-effective way to resolve an issue, hopefully proactively versus reactively.
So you're essentially saying that cloud computing, the problem isn't going to go away. It just, in some cases, it will enhance the solution to it, but in other cases, we're increasing the risk.
Well, I think a lot of the problems will go away in the strategy of not having 5,000 end users with admin rights having access to single machines. That'll absolutely go away. But the fact that we're still going to be using Windows servers and applications built to run on that environment that still have that heavy dependency on process and service reg keys to always work consistently, that's a continued risk.
Dave, thank you for your insights into agentless technology, into the issues that are associated with managing endpoints, particularly as they relate to the impact on cloud services and cloud environments.